friends. Today's video is going to be about sourdough. You already knew that from the title, but yeah, I mentioned in my last video that I was planning to do this video, and so here this video is. I filmed my whole process, start to finish, how I make sourdough. I'm just gonna go through that. I filmed the process kind of B-roll style, so I'm just gonna like talk through all the steps. Actually, first of all, before I get into my process, I got my sourdough starter actually from a friend. So I guess that's the first shortcut that I took. I didn't make my sourdough starter myself. Yeah, my friend Katie has made sourdough for a few years now, and she gifted me some of her starter at the beginning of the stay-at-home period because she thought that I would enjoy making bread, and I do. I guess that's my first shortcut, is that I didn't start my starter on my own, so I don't have any tips for that. But I know of another girl here on YouTube named Becca Bristow, and she did a similar video to this one, but she talked about a lot more of like the science behind sourdough, and she made her sourdough starter from like scratch, I guess you could call it. So she put together the flour and the water. That's all a sourdough starter is, by the way. It's just flour and water that ferments and creates bacteria, good bacteria, and yeah, starts like a little yeast colony in your kitchen. So I'll link her video wherever it goes if you want to check that out if you don't have a sourdough starter and you want to start one. But I'm pretty sure my friend Katie got hers online. You can also buy them like on Etsy or on other websites. I'll link some down below. So that's where I started making sourdough. And I've done a few processes through my sourdough adventures of different ways to make sourdough. I did the whole day process, which I was not a huge fan of. It felt like so much work, and I felt like I was tied to my house all day. And I've done a couple other methods, but this one is by far my favorite. It's like the laziest one, and I think it makes really great bread. So I think with all that being said, we can go ahead and get started. So the first thing that you want to do once you have your sourdough starter is feed it. So you want to feed it anywhere from like 4 to 6 hours before you're gonna bake. So I think I fed this starter around 1 p.m. So you can see that is my hungry starter right there. And what you're gonna do is dump it out. I do anywhere from like half to 3/4 I'll dump out. How much I have left. So then you're gonna feed it. I do a 1-to-1 ratio, flour and water. I also use filtered water, which is something that I've changed recently because I got a water filter, so now I use filtered water. This is also a bigger feeding because I'm planning on making bread this day. So yeah, 82 grams of water, and then I'm gonna do 82 grams of flour. And mix it all up. This is also something I do differently. A lot of people mix their starter food, I guess you could call it, like the flour and water mixture, in a separate container, and then they add it to the hungry starter. But I just do it all together because it's easier. I also use a metal knife, just a butter knife, which some people say is a big no-no, but I do it anyways, and it's totally fine. And cover it up, put it in a warm spot, and wait. Okay, now it's around 6 or 7 p.m. This is my nice bubbly starter. So we're gonna weigh out 150 grams. And then I believe it's 285 grams of water. Again, filtered water. I put too much in here, so I ended up having to scoop some out. That's the beauty of the scale though, is you can easily scoop some out to exactly what you need. And then mix this all together, just break it up. It doesn't need to be like totally, I mean, it's easy to do. It's not tricky to incorporate the starter into the water. And then 500 grams of flour. So this is an all-purpose flour. I use King Arthur. I love all-purpose for bread baking. This time I actually did something a little bit different. I did half King Arthur all-purpose and half a bread flour that I have a bag of from Central Milling. It's their organic artisan plus, I think. My favorite breads are with all-purpose flour though. The only time that I made a loaf with all of the Central Milling bread flour, it came out a little bit tough. That could have been user error, but since then I just like to use either all-purpose or 50-50 because this loaf came out really good. 500 grams of flour total though, so if you only have all-purpose, just use 500 grams of all-purpose, but here I did 250 and 250. And finally, salt. I use Redmond's real salt, so it's not sea salt, but it is natural salt. And I use anywhere from 11 to like 15 grams. I think I got 13 today. Now we're just gonna mix it all up. This first mix is just mixing until combined, and then we're gonna let it rest for an hour. And during that rest time, the water will start to absorb the flour and it'll come together. It'll come together more. Right now it looks kind of dry and flaky, but you'll see after the 1 hour rest, it's much more cohesive. Also, I always use plates when covering. A lot of people use plastic wrap or something like that, but we don't buy plastic wrap, so I find that a plate works totally fine. After we use our starter, we have to feed it again. So you'll see We used a lot of it, so we have to feed it again in order to keep it going. I also alternate between what I feed the starter between my central milling flour and my King Arthur. Today I just did the central milling. And I did, again, a 1-to-1 ratio, but I did a smaller feeding because I'm not gonna be making bread again for at least a few days, maybe even a week. So I don't wanna waste, well, it wouldn't go to waste, but I don't wanna quote unquote waste my flour all on feedings. And again, mix that all up just like before. Cover it and set it on the counter in your kitchen. So this is after the hour, and as I'm kneading, you'll be able to see how much smoother it is and stickier. So now you're just gonna knead for about a minute or two until it's nice and smooth. Also, I should note here that I did this after I finished filming these clips, but I also like to add a little bit of water to the bottom before I put the dough ball back in to help it more easily release afterwards. So yeah, just cover it again and then let it sit overnight, 8 hours plus. I think I ended up being like at least 12 because I didn't bake the next morning until around 9:30. So, preheat your oven to 500 degrees and stick your Dutch oven in there for at least 30 minutes. Here I'm doing my DIY banneton or bread basket. I don't have one of these and I don't feel the need to order one yet, so I just take a clean dish towel and I rub a bunch of flour on it. It's also best to use like a smoother dish towel, if that makes sense, like thin and smooth, as opposed to one that's like more terry cloth, because the dough will stick to the terry cloth. So yep, just flouring this dishcloth, and then I'm going to place it into my loaf pan. This is a big loaf pan. I think it's around a 10-inch, a little bit bigger than a standard size. And just let it fall into the center. Make sure all of the parts that are on the inside are floured. And flour your working surface. Now, I will be the first one to admit that I am not the best at shaping. This whole shaping of this loaf was kind of a train wreck. I don't know why I could not remember how I usually form this. I believe this shape is called a batard. That's probably wrong way to pronounce it, but it's B-A-T-A-R-D. It's French, so I don't know what the right pronunciation is. Yeah, I couldn't remember exactly how I did it the last time, so I kind of fumbled a little bit, but again, it's not a big deal. It makes bread, it's just how pretty the loaf that comes out. I also forgot to build surface tension by pulling, so if I have another video, I post baking bread a lot on my Instagram, so I'm sure I have a clip somewhere of me forming a more beautiful loaf that I can always add in here, but basically a tuck and roll situation happening here. And then place it into your DIY bread basket. You can also do this with a bowl if you want to make a round boule is what they're called, that bread shape. You can just do this in a large bowl, same thing, flour the towel, place it in, and then place your loaf in there. So we let that sit covered for another 30 minutes. And then I transfer it to a piece of parchment paper just because it's easier to then put into the Dutch oven. Also, I always miss this. I always think it's gonna fall out right into the middle and then it's always on the edge. So here I am trying to scooch it more close to the middle. And scoring, so I sharpened that little paring knife. And you can get really creative with your scoring. Some people make some beautiful designs on bread. This one's just really simple. I did 3 diagonal slashes. It gets the job done. And the point of scoring is to have like a release, so somewhere for the bread to rise. For some reason, and I think it's because I didn't build the surface tension, make it nice and tight, this loaf did break on the side. But again, that's okay, I don't really care. The bread came out really yummy, so that's all that really matters to me. Here I am placing it into the very hot Dutch oven, and I'm going to cover it and stick it in the oven at 500 for 15 minutes. At the 15-minute mark, I then lower the temperature. I usually do 450. I don't know why today I did 425, but whichever one you want to do, I guess. And I take off the lid so the outside can get some color. Let it go for another 15 minutes. Funny shapes to it. Now you can see how kind of funny shaped this one came out. I don't know what happened in that oven, but it's okay. Take it out, place it on a drying or cooling rack, not drying rack. You can hear the hollow. You always want to tap the bottom, make sure it sounds hollow. That means it's all the way cooked on the inside and beautiful. And here are some nice close-up shots. I think you'll be able to see in a second where it kind of broke on the side there. Yeah, right there. Oh well. So yeah, that is how I make my sourdough bread. If you have any other questions, you can leave them down below, and I will write out my recipe in writing, in the description box as well. But yeah, I think that covers it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you subscribe, and I'll see you in my next one.